Eason here, and welcome back to Movie Friday, where I talk about movies that I may recommend that you watch or avoid for your Friday night, Saturday night, or overall weekend viewing experience. This week, I will be talking about one of my favorite movies of all time. It is the breakout hit and passion project of director Yuhei Kitamura, whom you may know from his manga adaptations of Sky High and Alive, or from his later US work, which include the adaptation of Clive Barker's Midnight Meat Train, or the movies No One Lives, and more recently, Downrange. The movie I'm talking about is Versus. Also known as the Ultimate Versus in some circles, this little genre-bending masterpiece has gained quite a cult following over the years and has the distinction of being the future debut of actor, martial artist, Tak Sakaguchi. Now, Versus is an action, horror, martial arts, comedy, supernatural. Versus is a genre-bending movie that is considered by many to be director Kitamura's magnum opus, and it is apparent by the difficulties that he and everyone involved in making the movie have suffered during the making of it that this is indeed his passion project. These difficulties include a shoestring budget, the cast and crew consisting mainly of the director's friends, the music having been made by an old friend of the director's, screenplay being co-written by his friend and oft-collaborator Yudai Yamaguchi, and the movie taking place and being shot in a forest, mainly because they did not need a permit to shoot there. Versus's unique blend of elements and genres that it pulls from, its masterful directing, and its extravagant action scenes have gained it a cult following over the years. Here's the basic plot of Versus. There are 666 portals scattered throughout the world that lead to the other side. Yeah, it's that kind of a movie. The 444th of these portals is in a forest also known as the Forest of Resurrection. Called so because if you happen to die there, or if you happen to be buried there, soon after or after an indeterminate amount of time, you come back to life as a zombie. Tak Sakaguchi plays a prisoner who has managed to escape during transport, who has prearranged to meet with a bunch of Yakuza who should be picking him up. However, when the Yakuza do arrive, they also have a girl with them, which they have been instructed to bring by their boss, the enigmatic The Man, played by Hideo Sakaki. Since Tak doesn't really like the way that the Yakuza are handling a girl related to them with the line, "Thing is, I'm a feminist," he takes the girl away from them and runs into the forest. And since the Yakuza were supposed to also bring him to their boss, they give chase. However, really quickly, the Yakuza realize that not only are they stuck in the middle of a forest that they have been using as a dump site for all the bodies they put there, which are coming back to life, they're also stuck in an ancient game, an ancient scheme by the man that they don't really quite understand. Action ensues. Also coming into the mix are 3 assassins brought in by the man, the cops that Tak have run away from, and a buttload of zombies. So this clusterfuck of a setting is actually just the backdrop for what is simply a free-for-all taking place in a forest. The movie's trailer perhaps described it best when it said, 5 Yakuzas, 3 assassins, 2 cops, a hero with no memory, a man who knows everything, everybody fights. At its heart, Versus is an action movie, which means it has to have killer action in order to work. Luckily for us, it's indisputable that directing action is director Kitamura's strong suit. Be it an action scene involving multiple characters or being just a confrontation between two, he excels at creating action pieces that you are going to be glued at the screen to watch. The action and fight choreography is done very well, especially considering that Tak Sakaguchi himself had no prior movie experience before shooting this. But types of action included in the movie is incredibly diverse. You have shootouts, you have hand-to-hand combat, you have sword fights, you have one fight where Tak squares off against the Yakuza with the green shirt who has knives and he himself is unarmed. And it's not like the movie pulls punches when it needs to film action. In fact, action scenes are chock full of these little moments that seem to be based on nothing other than the fact that it looks cool on camera. I mean, think about it. It's basically 4 or 5 guys in the middle of a forest fighting off hordes of zombies who can wield weapons, by the way, while simultaneously trying to square off with each other. Now, such a setting might have become unwieldy if the plot structure of the movie fell apart, or that the movie felt like it was just including plot to move from action set piece to action set piece. But luckily, Versus has an undercurrent of plot that gradually reveals what is going on, and more importantly, why it's going on throughout the course of the movie. As the plot unfolds, as the game that is being played is gradually revealed, the stakes also get higher and higher and higher, resulting in the action being ramped up further and further and further, culminating in a glorious final confrontation between hero and villain in the classical style that you have to see to believe. Which is where perhaps my one major criticism of the movie lies. The action scenes are so engaging, so energetic, and so much fun to watch that when these scenes are cut with instances of plot happening or plot developing, it can slow things down a little too much. There's not only the overarching plot that is pretty much going on in the background of all this, there's also the more immediate plot of a more emotional connection developing between the girl and Tak's prisoner. However, the fact that Versus is primarily an action movie does not mean that it is just an action movie. In fact, one of the movie's biggest strengths is its ability to pull elements from other genres into it and blend it into its whole. What starts out as a basic chase and a fight in a forest suddenly evolves into a zombie apocalypse with the appearance of zombies, bringing in supernatural and horror elements. Other times, the movie throws romance at you. This blending of genres and this habit of pulling unexpected turns is what keeps the movie engaging and interesting. Speaking of comedy, however, let's get into the characters a little bit, because one of the biggest strengths of this movie is that it is chock full of memorable characters that are a joy to watch. First and foremost, we have Tak Sakaguchi's the prisoner, who seems to regard everything around him as being somewhat boring, in that he carries throughout most of the movie without actually really giving a shit for the most part. Sure, he rescues the girl to start things off, but he doesn't seem to be giving all that much of a shit about the girl specifically, and he always has this somewhat bored, somewhat disinterested look on his face, except for when there's a fight. When there's violence around, he tends to have fun. Chiaki Misako of Suicide Club fame plays the girl, which, by the way, I'm referring to the characters by these little designations because they don't really have names in the script. None of the characters have proper names, so I'm using the names given to them by Kitamura or descriptors that me and my friends use. So anyway, Chiaki Misako as the girl plays her as if she only understands about 50% of what's going on. She alternates between being utterly confused about things and seemingly knowing everything about what's going on. For the most part, the girl is treated more or less as a plot device, as she's constantly pulled and shoved and dragged everywhere by the other characters. The man, the main antagonist of the movie, played to perfection by Hideo Sakaki, is an interesting take on a villain. Playing it off as cool, sort of aloof, but also weirdly sexually charged and salacious, when he decides to go ham on this role, he is hysterical to watch. But the gold star, the award for the scene stealer, goes to Kenji Matsuda, who plays Yakuza leader with butterfly knife, or as he's more widely known, the Yakuza in the green shirt. This guy absolutely hilarious. He's a scene stealer in the way that even when he's in the background, he does something to bring attention to himself. He makes a face, he makes a sound, he makes a weird posture, he makes a weird gesture. He seems to be playing the Yakuza leader with an inherently effeminate quality to him for whatever reason. He loads his gun weird, he holds his weapons weird, he has knives on him for some reason, and later in the movie he becomes completely unhinged, and he is absolutely funny as fuck. I think there's only like one scene where his character is actually serious, and when that happens, you know shit has hit the fan. Second special mention goes to Minoru Matsumoto's Crazy Yakuza with Amulet. This guy is a runt. He is easily shorter than every other actor and actress in this movie. He spends the entire movie a panicked, hysterical, screaming, insane mess. You see, he doesn't spend a movie on the verge of freaking out like some other characters. He freaks out, but the thing is, he doesn't stop freaking out after that. And as such, this little ball of anxious energy is extremely funny as well. Last but not least, Yukihito Tanikatos, the master of all martial arts. He's one of the cops that is supposed to have been transporting the prisoner that the prisoner gets away from. He is the master of all martial arts, like he says, and he has reflexes that are 500 times faster than that of Mike Tyson's. His words, not mine. Now, as you might be gathering, Versus is kind of crazy as a movie. However, its craziness never overwhelms the movie as a whole, and it never gets beyond being just a property of the movie. The crazy may be rampant, but it doesn't take over. The lunatics never run the asylum. Now, I have been gushing non-stop about this movie throughout this video, and I do admit to being a little biased on account of, like I said, this being one of my favorite movies of all time. But yes, Versus isn't a perfect movie. The movie came out in 2000, shot late 1999, and was made on what is the equivalent of a pocket full of coins. So in terms of special effects and makeups, you shouldn't be expecting Hollywood level shit. And if you happen to be watching the ultimate version of this movie, which involves the crew going back into the forest years after making the first one to add some scenes that Kitamura wanted to shoot but couldn't for one reason or another, you are going to see a very noticeable difference in quality between the scenes that were shot later and the scenes that were part of the original cut. The music is okay. I mean, it's awesome when it needs to be. There are memorable songs that you will encounter in the movie, but in general, it just fades into the backdrop as indistinct action music for most of the time. Some of the jokes, if you are not used to this kind of humor, may fall flat with you. I mean, they didn't with me, but I have a peculiar, let's say, sense of humor, and this one fit right in, so might not always work for you. And if you are going to be watching this movie with a dub, which you might choose to, you are going to be in for far more comedy than you might have bargained for, because the dub has some misspoken lines that are either unintentionally or intentionally made funnier than the originals. But all in all, these aren't things that distract from the movie being as awesome as it is and as deserving of a cult following. So do I recommend this movie? What do you think? Of course I do. You should definitely see this one. I mean, personally, like I said, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, so I really don't see a reason why anybody should not be watching this one. So with all that said, I think I am just going to go and watch Versus one more time, because no matter how many times I've watched it, and I have pretty much memorized the whole thing, I still have fun with it. Until next time, it's C-Sin. Peace out.